everybody. Hi, and welcome to ONNTv's political debate for the 2018 provincial election. Tonight, we are going to focus on issues that are of concern to Northerners specifically, and we hope you'll stay tuned for the next 90 minutes and listen to all of the perspectives that will be offered here today. Our goal is to inform you about the issues and also encourage you, when all is said and done, to vote. There's no greater privilege in our democracy, and many people have sacrificed so much to give us the opportunity to have that say in how our government works. The debate is actually going to take like a panel approach. Our panelists include the CEO of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Rory Ring. Rory, welcome.
Thank you very much, Luanna. Great opportunity to be here.
Timothy Murphy, who hosts our morning show as well as On Point evenings, Tuesday to Friday.
Nice to see you again, Luann.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad you stayed awake. And me. Prior to the debate, candidates' names were drawn to establish the order of opening statements and questions. So for those opening statements, each candidate is going to receive 60 seconds. We have a timer on them, so that's where the pressure comes in. After all of the questions have been answered, each candidate is going to have the opportunity to ask one of their counterparts one question with, again, an answer of only 60 seconds. That's when we're going to reverse the order, and then we'll move into closing statements. So let's get started. We're going to start with question number 1 from Mr. Rory Ring, and we're starting with the Northern Ontario Party, Sandra Holmberg.
Very good. Our membership relies very significantly on the small business and medium-sized business economy. Northern's economy is built really in concentration in the mining sectors, so we'd like to ask, and our membership would like to know, does your party support the construction of a Noront ferrochrome processing facility in Northern Ontario, and specifically as a candidate, how would you promote Sault Ste. Marie to ensure that that is located, facility is located here?
Well, we do absolutely at the Northern Ontario Party endorse that. We want to undertake partnerships, make sure that goes forward. As you said yourself, job creation is something that's vital to the North, and not just that, but making sure that the Northerners here have first crack at the jobs that are going to be trickling out of that. Apart from that, we're really concerned with logistics, so we're really hoping to get rail looked at, rail put in, and the line hopefully going from Nakina up. Yeah, other than that, that's basically it for the actual Ring of Fire itself, and I think that the spin-off jobs from that we should see a benefit there. So,
Sandra, thank you so much. And now from the Green Party, Cara Flanagan.
The Green Party supports the Ring of Fire development and the Noront ferrochrome processing facility. However, I think there's some more information that we need to have before we determine that it's right for our community. We need to know that it's going to be carbon neutral and run on renewable energy. We need to know that the transportation of the product is going to not damage the environment. We also need to know what the health impact assessment is going to be on our community, where it's going to be located. And further, I'd like to see an environmental assessment prior to agreeing that it's good for our community. If all those things pan out, then of course we would welcome it to our community. Thank you.
Jacqueline Hamill with the Liberal Party.
So of course we're supportive of the ferrochrome processing facility here in Sault Ste. Marie. I know that City Council, the Mayor, and City staff worked very hard to put together a compelling and strong bid. At this point, it is the company's decision as to where that processing facility will be located. But as your member of provincial parliament, it would be my job to ensure that any legislative work that needs to be done on the provincial level, once a location is picked, is dealt with. So I would be in a position to do that legislative work, support that bid if it were to come to Sault Ste. Marie, and ensure that the Ring of Fire, of course, the road is integral to this project. So our platform actually contains a commitment to the Ring of Fire and the construction of the road. So it's important that we're moving forward with those pieces as well.
Thank you so much. From the Progressive Conservatives, Ross Romano.
From the start of my campaign for the by-election last year, for 6 months I knocked on every door in the city twice and told every person about the ferrochrome processing facility and the Ring of Fire, made sure to educate our community so we knew about the benefits of what that project would bring to Sault Ste. Marie and the thousands of jobs it would create here. Immediately after my election, I was on an airplane. I met with Noront officials several times over the course of the summer, multiple times per week at times, and ensured that we were going to be a viable option for Noront moving forward. Was able to even have the CEO of Algoma Steel attend at the offices with Noront in Toronto to negotiate the space where the land, where the facility would be created here in Sault Ste. Marie. I was instrumental in the group that went to Toronto and submitted a bid on behalf of the city on February 2nd, created a community awareness group with a number of our leaders in our community, in the business community, and pitched a great platform to Noront on February 2nd, and I'm very confident that if we're not number 1A, we're at least 1B, and I'm very, very confident that we will secure that facility for our city and the thousands of jobs that will come with it.
Thank you so much. And from the NDP, Michelle McLeave Kennedy. Michelle?
So yes, we are in favor and have put $1 billion forward to get the project moving on the Ring of Fire. We'll be calling all the stakeholders together to discuss the issues, get the road built, and get things moving with the chromium plant. Also, though, we had discussed that there will be an environmental study done to make sure that it's healthy for our community. The number of spin-off jobs, of course, would be very well for our community, as well as we have the rail strategy to build the rail, Northern Rail, and get the loop done so that we can bring products back and forth to where they need to go to market.
Thank you so much. And how's everybody feeling? First one's down, everybody's good?
Mm-hmm. One down, 8 to go.
That's right. Now with question number 2, Mr. Tim Murphy.
Whether viewing it through an economic, an environmental, or a safety lens, there is irrefutable evidence that a return to passenger rail service in Northern Ontario would be highly beneficial. Yet while the province continues to pour millions of dollars into the rail systems in Southern Ontario, Northern Ontario Rail Transit lacks similar support. Are you prepared to provide assistance to stakeholders in obtaining senior government funding to ensure the continued operation of the threatened Huron Central Railway? And do you support the expansion of passenger rail service that could ultimately result in a mere 4-hour train ride from Sault Ste. Marie to Toronto?
And we'll start again with Sandy.
Okay, me again first. Yes, that is part of our platform. It's entrenched in that, and I encourage people to go to our website and look into it further. But yeah, I've been in talks with Nathan Brown. He's part of the Searchmont Rail, kind of a revival group. So we're looking back at that as well. Yeah, that's the whole point, is that the money is not being filtered up here, and we would really like the opportunity to go down south and remind them that we have needs as well, whether that is passenger rail or merchandise logistics. As far as tourism goes, it ties into that as well. That's something that we are really trying to get a link to, and there's talks that at the mill that we're going to have a passenger rail there as well, and hopefully the shovels will be in the ground for that shortly. As far as that goes, I mean, the economical benefits, as well as, you know, you're taking cars off the road now, so that there's a safety issue, so socioeconomic issues as well.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Appreciate it. Same question for Kara.
I was really excited to attend the Northeastern Ontario Rail Network Summit that was held in April here, and all of the great ideas that were brought about how beneficial expansion and re-establishment of rail in Northern Ontario will be for us. Not only is it a safety factor for passengers, as well as removing all the vehicles off of the road, it also connects us, and in addition to moving cargo, it's important to move people, because going forward there will be people who will not have cars, who will not be able to drive, and they need a way to get around the north and be connected. It's also good for the environment. We'd like an electrified trains, and lowers greenhouse gases, so that meets our planet goals. and it's so viable, and it's moving the masses is the way we need to go.
Thank you so much. Cara Flanagan, the Green Party. Jacqueline Hamill now from the Liberals.
So the Ontario Liberals have a track record of supporting Huron Central Rail in our community. In 2009, they did approach the provincial and federal governments for funding, and we were able to give them $15 million in funding to keep them going. So of course, I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of working with HCR beyond the election to secure funding so that they can continue to operate in Northern Ontario. Just recently, it was announced that they were able to secure NOHSC funding, over $800,000 to go towards rail maintenance. So something like that is very important. And when you look at the investments that we're making in terms of raising the budget of the NOHSC and where those dollars are going, so in this case, going to support HCR, I think that it's really important that it's noted that we are demonstrating our commitment to that, and we would be, of course, committed to that beyond the election.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. And now Mr. Romano.
I absolutely support passenger rail. Our party supports passenger rail. I've been a part of the ONN talks as well and was a speaker there. Our party is committed to ensuring that the Northlander is rebuilt. We are going to look at the remainder of the rail loop, and we'll look at creating that throughout the rest of our mandate. That is something very important to have people movers in our region, which we are severely lacking since that was cut by the Liberal government in 2012. Now, with respect to HCR, I've worked on this since November when the issue first arose. I'm committed to doing more than just what is status quo. We cannot continue to go down the path that we have in the past. A number of years ago, when the investments were made by the Liberal government, it was at the last minute, it was at the 11th hour, and it didn't take into consideration looking at sustainability of the railroad long term. That's what I am committed to do, ensuring we talk with stakeholders. Not only the initial investments, just to keep it afloat, they need $44 million right now just to get their transfer stations all up to date and ready to go so that they are safe. We will ensure that not only do we cover that off, but we will also move forward on looking at the viability and sustainability of that operation moving forward.
Thank you very much, Ross. Michelle McLeod-Kennedy from the NDP.
So we had a press conference about a week and a half ago discussing Huron Central Rail and our commitment to giving them money over the next 5 years to support the rail and get things moving in Northern Ontario. So by extending the rail strategy and the Northern Loop, as has been said by some of the other candidates, we will certainly work with Huron Central to get things moving and move both people and product in Northern Ontario.
Thank you very much. We're going to start with Cara. If Cara's microphone's working okay. Craig, how's she doing over there?
I think she's doing okay.
Okay. Craig, thank you so much, our audio man here. Cara, starting with you. The Northern highways are always on voters' minds, of course. How would you get more four-laning, therefore safer highways in the north? Would you bring it back to the provinces for maintenance?
Yes, I would. Going forward, we're noticing that our weather and our climate are changing, so that actually challenges our infrastructure annually with freezing and expansion happening more often. We're going to have more problems with our roadways going forward. The Green Party doesn't recommend or support the expansion of the highway infrastructure. We want to move towards mass transit, the re-establishment of rail, and we also want to incentivize people to use mass transit between communities so we don't have as much pressure on our roads. We don't need more roads, we need more alternatives to roads, and alternatives such as cycling and active transportation. And we've actually committed that to 5% of the transportation budget to expansion of active transportation like cycling and walking and running.
Thank you so much, Cara Flanagan. Jacqueline Hamill with the Liberals.
So our platform does contain a commitment to four-lane the highway all along the Trans-Canada Highway. So it's good news for Ontario. It's good news for Northern Ontario specifically. And we've also committed to, as the contracts expire, move maintenance back to the public sphere. So that's another good commitment in that platform. The other thing that we're doing is we're investing $206 million over 10 years in northern infrastructure. So we're looking at maintaining those roads, four-laning them, keeping them safe, moving the maintenance back to the public sphere. Those commitments are all in our platform. They're costed out, they're sound, and I'm very proud of that program. I really think that it demonstrates that we're committed to improving transportation corridors in the north. On top of that, we have maintained the Northern Highways program through the MNDM. So again, a really great program that's making sure that we're getting the infrastructure dollars that we need, but also better as possible. And so we have those commitments in our platform to do better.
Same question for you, Mr. Ross Romano with the Progressive Conservatives.
Thank you very much. It's kind of interesting. For 4 consecutive elections now, I've heard commitments to 4-lane the highway, and there's been really hasn't been much progress at all with respect to that. We still remain waiting for that. The fact of the matter is it's something that needs to be done. It's an issue of public safety. Having 2 lanes with a lot of truck traffic on that highway is dangerous. It's dangerous for our community, it's dangerous for the people of Algoma, Manitoulin, and it's dangerous for other people traveling across the Trans-Canada Highway. It needs to be done. The argument is obvious from a public safety perspective, but there's also another issue, and it's an important issue that we really need to focus on, and it's growing our economy in Northern Ontario. And growing our roads and our ability to get products to market more effectively, more efficiently. It's not just a matter of roads, like we discussed earlier in the previous question. Rail, air, all of these forms of transportation need to be enhanced so that we could be more competitive in the business market, and we give options, more options to businesses to be able to better get their products to market more effectively, more efficiently, and create better competitiveness so that we can be more competitive as a region and enhance our job growth because of it.
Thanks so much, Ross. Michelle McLeave Kennedy with the NDP.
So yes, we do also support. So I have family members that travel from here to Wawa on a weekly basis to go to work. And some of the horror stories that were heard this winter trying to travel back and forth with road closures, etc. So we have put money into maintain the roads and maintain the infrastructure of the roads to better get people to work as well as to get products to market. And it's very important here in the north that we have that maintenance, and companies that know the weather conditions that are here in the north are different than Southern Ontario.
Thank you very much. And now with the third question.
So we have to go to
Oh, I'm sorry. sorry, yes.
You can skip me if you want.
Sandy Holmberg, Northern Ontario Party.
I mean, obviously, I think as somebody who doesn't plan on leaving the vicinity, a 4-lane highway is a must. Mind you, when they decided to put in the 4-lane highway that they have now at the juncture of Bar River Road going into town, that was a lengthy process. And again, there was not really any concern to the environment per se, but I can usually come up with a story. And they bought some of the rock off of our property actually, and left blasting mats, and we actually went to court over that. So something like that, still, again, making sure you're not running through properties, probably private properties that might cause you an issue. And for the tourism aspect, I just had an Uber driver when I was in Toronto last, and he mentioned going to see the Agua Canyon tour train, and he asked me, how's the highway up there? So he already kind of had an inkling that it wasn't going to be a fun trip for him. So that's something else. So it's already gotten down there that it's not great. So.
Thank you very much. And now with our third question, we're going to go to Jacqueline Hamill with the Liberal Party first. Rory.
Thank you. The small business community has been significantly burdened with the costs of doing business in Ontario. What would your party do to help offset some of the costs that are being faced by small business, whether that be the cost of hydro, electricity, regulatory burden, and the cost of labor? How will your government approach making Ontario more competitive, and especially small business more competitive?
So thank you for the question, Rory. It is an important one. Small business is the backbone of our community here in the Soo, but also across the province. 95% of employers are small business owners. So I just want to, there's a lot that I could talk about here, but you know, in the last budget, we're committed to $500 million in new initiatives to help small business across the province. We reduced the corporate income tax rate from 4.5% to 3.5%. We are investing in programs that are making it easier to connect employers with potential potential employees, talented workers, and we're essentially just looking at ways that we can invest across the board to make sure that a healthy community is where a healthy business community thrives. So we're wanting to make those investments across the board to make sure that we have a community that people are healthy in, which in turn means healthy employees, it means healthy businesses. So there's a lot of excellent things that we're doing to support small business, and I'm very proud of those things.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline Hamill. Now to Ross Romano with the Progressive Conservatives.
Small business is absolutely the backbone of our economy. We need to invest in our businesses. We need to give them the tools they require to be competitive in the work world. And in order to be competitive, we cannot continue to overpay on hydro. We've seen a hydro increase of over 300% in the last 15 years. That needs to change. We're going to reduce hydro rates by 12% by getting rid of the Green Energy Act. We are overpaying on power because of the Green Energy Act. It doesn't help anybody. We're going to roll back contracts wherever we can in order to get savings there. We are going to reduce taxes through the carbon tax cap and trade, where we're shipping off over $400 million a year to California, helping them be more competitive. With our hydro rates, we're allowing Michigan and Ohio to be more competitive because we give them our power at a loss. And we're stuck with it. We can't do anything about it because we need to make something off of that money, and we need to stop these ridiculous regulations. We have over 380,000 regulations in this province that are burying businesses. We have lost 350,000 manufacturing jobs in the last 15 years. It needs to change. We need to give the tools to small businesses to be able to succeed. We need to get out of the way and allow them to do what they do best, operate their businesses, employ our people.
Thank you so much, Ross. And Michelle, it's your turn.
So I was a small business owner, and the red tape was horrendous to try and get my business started and get my business going. So we have a plan to look at how do we streamline that problem? How do we get things going, and how do we make it easier for people to run their business and get through all the regulations? We are also going to reduce the hydro rates by 30%. Where the cap and trade, 25% of the cap and trade will go back to small business and medium-sized business. We'll close some of the loopholes in small and medium-sized business. So we have a lot of things in our plan for small business, and it is the backbone of the community, as has been stated. When I sat on the Community Adjustment Committee last year, that was one of the things that we spoke about, was diversifying business in Sault Ste. Marie, and how do we get things moving in the downtown and bring other businesses to Sault Ste. Marie? How do we make this a destination? And by helping out small business and removing some of the regulations, we can do that.
Thank you so much. And to you now, Sandy.
We're focused a lot on manufacturing, like I said, and I think that we are going to, in our platform, try and eliminate some municipal taxes for the interim when a business has dedicated themselves that they're going to finish 80% of their finished form within Northern Ontario. Smaller scale businesses, I mean, we are wrought with talent as far as entrepreneurship goes. I can speak to that. My business hinges on the businesses and how they thrive in Sault Ste. Marie. Downtown is definitely coming back, as far as I can tell. Apart from that, another story, of course, would be a horror story for Dunel's, which is right on the Trans-Canada Highway in Echo Bay, had to reduce their space significantly just due to hydro. So that's a little troubling.
And Kara from the Green Party.
Raising the minimum wage without adjusting the taxes for local businesses was very short-sighted, and the Green Party would give immediate relief by raising the employee health tax exemption, doubling it up, or more than doubling it up to $1 million, and that would immediately put money in the pockets of small businesses to adjust. The electricity costs, we have to keep in mind that our old nuclear plants they can't be powered down, so we have to sell that excess energy across to the Americans, just like our excess renewable energy, and we do so at a loss. So we could save $1 billion a year in retiring the Pickering power plant and investing and signing a contract with to get cheap hydroelectric power from Quebec. That is the long-term plan that's going to actually work to lower power prices. People have a hard time wrapping their brain around the fact that energy now is free, and what we need to do is look at how we capture it and store it, and that's where we need to go.
Thank you so much. We're going to change the topic now with Tim Murphy's question. Starting this time around, Mr. Ross Romano with the PCs.
Last year, 700 medical professionals signed a letter asking our health minister to declare a public health emergency, requesting emergency funding to deal with the opioid crisis on street level, with money going where it was most needed. The minister declined, but announced a 3-year, $222 million plan to improve access to services and treatment. Critics say the reality is the province already spends 5 times that amount to deal with the aftermath of opioid addiction, and that the minister's promise doesn't address education, prevention, or the expansion for existing clinics. How would you address a request for more support for frontline workers, more safe injection sites, and an expansion of addiction treatment facilities in Sault Ste. Marie?
Thank you for that question, Tim. And obviously we know this is a very serious issue in Sault Ste. Marie, but it's an issue across Northern Ontario. It's an issue in small communities. There was a time that everybody thought that these things would only affect large urban centers, but we're seeing an epidemic where it's hitting the smaller communities. We need to focus efforts on prevention, on education strategies. We urge the government not to waste $5 to $6 million in vanity ads and to put it towards crime, put it towards prevention strategies with respect to the opioids addictions issue, and they refused. There is a major problem that needs to be addressed. We have too many people going to our hospitals, to our emergency rooms to get help, because there's nowhere else to go. We need to invest the money where it matters most. That's why our party is prepared to make an investment, a record investment of $1.9 billion into mental health and addictions, matching the federal government's budget promise of the same amount. We're going to put that money into addictions issues in order to ensure that there's better crime prevention strategies with the feds and the municipal governments as well, and work together with all levels of government to ensure that we have education strategies as well as prevention strategies in place.
Thank you so much, Ross. And Michelle McLeod-Kennedy with the NDP.
So we have in our platform that we will be putting forward a mental health and addictions ministry, which will deal with the immediate issues that we have in Sault Ste. Marie. As we are quite aware, the opioid crisis is quite, we are the epicenter apparently for Northern Ontario around this issue, which is a sad state in our community for such a small community. It is not just a northern issue, it is an issue around Ontario, and education certainly is going to be part of it, but we need to have services for people when they want to have the service. They can't wait for 6 months to get service or have to wait to go to a clinic or a doctor. So by putting the mental health and addictions ministry together, we'll have frontline workers. So we've committed to frontline workers, we've committed to more health nurses in this high school system so that the kids that need counseling can get counseling right away, as well as we've put money in even younger for children's mental health, as children are younger and need services at that age.
Thank you very much. From the Northern Ontario Party, Sandy, you're up.
We would really like to utilize, say, for example, older hospitals and have a space for people to go. If you're in a crisis situation, are you in walking distance to be able to get help at any point in time? And I think people need to feel a little more uncomfortable, because if you think you're immune to that situation, nobody's immune to it. It could happen to any household at any time, and the hospital needs to, somebody needs to free up some money at the hospital, but also the municipalities, because our paramedics are up against a wall. They're giving Noxolone 5 to 7 times a day. I just spoke to a paramedic today, actually, on my journeys, Scott Neal, and he said he cannot leave them at the hospital, right? So the hospital is the nurses are way overworked. So he's literally standing there waiting for them to even be seen, because he can't leave. So that's really a major issue as well.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And now we're talking to Kara about opioids.
I'm so proud of our hospital locally. Sault Area Hospital has created the rapid access addiction medication and down on East Street, and they did that in conjunction with local addiction and mental health agencies as a collective. And I think that we'd have to look at those models of collaboration. We also need to think about, more importantly, because we have higher rates than the rest of the province, the first thing we have to do is stop the dying. And by that can be providing medical grade drugs to addicts so that they're not at risk of having to buy the street drugs in the first place. The fentanyl that is contaminated and contaminating other drugs is really the problem. So if they had medical grade drugs, then that would stop the dying anyway. We need to be a little bit more creative too in how we dispense these. We have methadone clinics downtown, and people need to be able to move and have their day in the community, and so having to go to the same place repeatedly is really affects their life.
Thank you so much, Kara. And Jacqueline Hamill from the Liberal Party.
So on top of the $222 million, we also invested $70 million to establish the RAM Clinic, which just opened up here on East Street, and they are reporting success. But what I think speaks to this is our investment in mental health care. So $2.1 billion, and over 3 years you're going to see a total of $70 billion of the budget going to mental health care. We're looking at this through a preventative lens. So within the next year, 12,000 more young people will have access to the mental health care supports that they need. We're going to see another mental health worker in every single secondary school in the province. So we're really going with that holistic approach to address this issue, but it hits so many other issues in our community. So these types of investments are important. It'll alleviate stress on our hospital. It'll make sure that people are getting the supports that they need before they hit crisis mode. And those investments are incredibly important. I'm so proud of the mental health care investment that the Liberal platform has. It's costed, it's there, and we're working on it.
Thank you so much. I have the next question for our candidates, and we're going to start this round with Michelle McLeave-Kennedy with the NDP. Should northern immigration be more of a focus with the provincial government? Michelle?
Well, here in Sault Ste. Marie, as we're quite aware, our population has been declining for some time. And that was one of the issues when I was on the Community Adjustment Committee last year as well. We were talking about how do we get more people to Sault Ste. Marie? How do we get more workers that have trades? How do we bring more people to Sault Ste. Marie? So if we need to get people through the immigration partnership, that would be certainly a way to get new people to our community and make sure that we have people to come in and take the jobs that people are going to be retiring from in the next 10 years. Because currently, right now, we don't have enough people to fill the jobs that are going to be vacant in the next while. So yes, immigration is going to be important, and we have plans in place to bring people to Northern Ontario so that they can come for skilled jobs and make skilled jobs here that will be good for our economy.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Sandy Holmberg with the Northern Ontario Party. It's your turn.
I think that that ties in with attracting local talent, like I said, as far as scholastically, so education, professors, you know, attracting them, making them want to come here as well. I've had some amazing professors at my post in secondary at Algoma U, and you know, keeping them might be a little bit of a challenge, but if it's a wonderful place to live, I mean that comes back to the idea that we want to be welcoming and open-minded, and just a border city, you know, aesthetically one of the best cities to live in Northern Ontario. So I think that would be part of the push there as well. Like I said, doctors as well, because we could really use some local oncology and psychiatry, I think.
Thank you very much. Kara?
Okay, we have an opportunity here because we're hearing in the news that there are refugees coming across our borders all the time, and so welcoming them to Sault Ste. Marie would help us with our population and our population decline. But in not just welcoming immigrants and refugees, we have to be sure that we have everything in place to make them feel welcome and connected, and we need to help them access the resources that are available to them so that they can settle, and once the dust settles, then they can flourish in our community. I'm really, really excited that with the Syrian refugees that we've welcomed to our community, and that was an enormous effort with local people and their organization Refugee 705. So those are the types of opportunities that we have here, and we can look at the successes of those and then build on them. Sault Ste. Marie is one of the best places in the world to live. Shh.
Thank you very much. Jacqueline?
So we have a very real challenge ahead of us, and that's one of demographics. We have an aging population. A few weeks ago, we hosted NOLM, so all the large urban mayors in Northern Ontario were in Sault Ste. Marie, and they discussed looking at a pilot project that the Atlantic provinces are running right now in terms of an immigration strategy. We need skilled immigrants to come and fill the skills gap here. We're going to need people to take care of our seniors. So the city staff have looked at something like that, and they are supportive of it. I believe they also looked at it at FONM. So we're very supportive of looking at the same type of mechanism to try and attract immigrants to this community. Our investments in education is another way that we're doing that. So we want to make sure that we're not only attracting students to our educational facilities here, but also retaining our youth. What I find really disappointing is that at the Northern Ontario debate, the Doug Ford decided not to endorse an immigration strategy. So I'm interested to hear how they plan to deal with the challenges of demographics here in our community, but we are certainly supportive of it, and I look forward to working with the city on that.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Ross?
Thank you. So with the skills gap we have present in our city and throughout Northern Ontario and the demographic challenges, it's important to have a strategy that is very provincially focused, but it's important to have all levels of government helping out with respect to this. That's municipal, provincial, and federal. At the federal level, they made some significant strides when they created the Express Entry program at the federal level. However, the LMIA process, the Labor Market Impact Assessment process, makes it very, very difficult. That's a regulatory burden that makes it difficult for employers to bring in prospective employees into their communities. It's application-based. Every single application is a fee. It's a very difficult process to navigate through for employers. We need to fix that. So we need to lobby the feds to fix that. At the municipal level, we need to sell our city. We need municipal councils to be able to say, this is the reason why you should come to Sault Ste. Marie, and give them something to want to come to. But at the provincial level, we need a much more regional-based approach. Right now, people come into the province and they are all filtered to Toronto. It's in no way based on a regional perspective. Manitoba has a great model where the municipalities themselves can see who's coming into the province, see who has what skills, see where the gaps are, and they can solicit those people to come to those communities. I think that's how I would like to focus.
Thank you so much. And now with our next question from Rory Ring with the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, because I almost forgot you, Sandy, you get to start this answer.
Right, thank you very much. And actually along the same lines of thought, immigration is a very important aspect of our labor force. However, it is, as you point out, wrought with some challenges and some difficulties. The fastest growing youth demographic in all of Canada and right here in Sault Ste. Marie is our Indigenous community. What would your government do to partner with the business community and industry to ensure that the support mechanisms are in place for our Indigenous community so that we can get them participating in the economic prosperity of Ontario?
We touch on this in our platform as well, and it's very, very important. And as the name states, it's the Northern Ontario Party, and we have some ridings in on First Nations as well. So it's very, very important to us that that the reconciliation that has been put forth actually goes forward. Education, I think that's part of it as well. I mean, it's socioeconomically, it's really tough to deal with. I'm not privy to any funding, how they're divvying up those funds, but I'm pretty sure that the Indigenous communities, and I can't speak for them, would like access to proper drinking water first and foremost. And work on all those things. So if we're going to put forth a reconciliation, I think that it should encompass all the things that were promised, and we want to make sure that on our part we can at the very least hold people accountable to make sure that those go forward. Education being one. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandy. Kara Flanagan with the Green Party.
Well, we just had a report released that was studying partnerships and found that partnerships with the First Nations were very, very successful, and they followed them over the years. And our own Economic Development Corporation has been using partnerships for years and realizes how valuable they are. The Green Party believes that any resources extraction or any development in Northern Ontario must include the First Nations in the area as full partners, and must have benefits of whatever development happens. So those partnerships going forward will be essential. And considering resource extraction and those types of things, that there must be an economic and an employment benefit to the First Nations in those areas. We also see that in the 94 calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation, that must be a part of it as well. So we have a long way to go, but let's get started for the next 7 generations.
Thank you very much. And with the Liberals, Jacqueline Hamill.
So we're investing $30 million over the next 2 years to expand the Skills Advance program. So that provides training to Indigenous communities, get them part of the workforce, get them connected with various employers. Our Ring of Fire strategy also is a respectful strategy. So we are cognizant of the First Nations communities that are up there. We are being respectful in our approach to developing the Ring of Fire. And we're focused on making sure that the opportunities that are coming out of the Ring of Fire will also benefit First Nations communities that are there, but also that are expanding down into some of the more southern region of the north, if you will, communities like Sault Ste. Marie. So we do have a plan in place for that, and I'm very proud of those investments.
Thank you. Ross Romano.
Miigwech, Anin Bojo, Ross Romano Indigenous Cause, Bawating Indojaba, Minokasheb, Anishinaabe Yayan. After I got elected, I wanted to tour the Ring of Fire region, and I didn't want to go to the mine area. I wanted to go into the communities that would be impacted by the ring. I went to the 5 communities. I went to Yabamatong and Nishkantika and Nibinimik and Martins Falls and Webequay. I went into those communities because I wanted to properly consult with these people. I wanted to meet with the chiefs, have conversations with them to see how we can move forward these types of economic opportunities for Northern Ontario. $60 billion in the ground. How can we work on it together? You know what I realized my first night in the community? I was in Nibinimik, I spent the night there, and I thought, one day down the road, I really believe that we will look at the Ring of Fire not for its economic ability as the primary win that we had there, but it's actually going to be secondary, because I think the primary win is that we will be able to make leaps and bounds. We will grow leaps and bounds towards reconciliation. Right now, it's a word. What does it mean? What does it look like? How do we get there? How we get there is by working together with our Indigenous partners to be able to get these types of projects underway. What Noront is doing right now with the Ring of Fire is actually quite incredible. They've turned it around, and instead of the business being the proponent of the road, the First Nations are being the proponent of the road. That's how we move these things forward.
Thank you, Ross. Michelle?
So we do need to work definitely on the recommendations made by the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. So we have put money forward to work on a government-to-government basis with the First Nations, and there's also in our plan there's also language to cover business to business, using Native business and making sure that they have some of their businesses are used by the government. So to make sure that their communities are consulted on how business is done, and using them as partners on a more equal basis. Also, we looked at clean water, which, as was mentioned around the table, it is certainly an issue, and we're aware of that. And we need to look at some recommendations that have been done for that. And we have money put forward in our platform. It's fiscally there, and it shows how we will spend the money to put things forward for the First Nations.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to start this round of answers with Cara Flanagan with the Green Party. Tim Murphy has a question.
2014 Stats Can data tells us that Ontario's arts, culture and heritage sector represented $27.7 billion, or 4.1% of the province's gross domestic product, and over 300,000 jobs. The arts widen individual perspectives by giving voice to varying points of view, stimulating curiosity and binding people together in shared experiences. While increasingly recognized as an important factor in overall wellness and improved education outcomes, arts and culture are sometimes framed as elitist, non-essential and back-burner items when it comes to government budgeting. What does your party's platform offer in support to a sector that is at its very core of our collective identity as Canadians?
I'm so glad to get this question, because everyone knows that I go to almost everything that's going on.
I know, I always hear you in the audience.
Yes. And, so one of the things that in our platform, which is jobs, people, and planet. Jobs, why do we have jobs? We have jobs so that we can enjoy the things that we love, like arts and culture and sports and all of those things. And so we need enough work in order to be able to appreciate the talent that we have in our community. And it always blows me away when I go to a show and I realize that we have so much talent in music and arts and culture and in every facet. So the Green Party wants to make arts councils funding more secure. It's very common for political parties and governments to make donations to big arts and cultural things, but we need to value and support local and smaller museums, art galleries, theater groups, and at the local level, because that's where we are, and those are accessible to us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jacqueline, your turn.
So I'd like to point to the NOHFC as a massive success story in terms of supporting arts and culture, specifically in the North. When you look at TV shows like Letterkenny, when you look at the amount of movies that have been filmed up in our region, shows like Cardinal, we're seeing amazing success in terms of those types of companies looking to the NOHFC for funding. Not only that, but so many festivals have gone through the NOHFC to receive funding in order to host street parties, block parties, different things throughout the summer to get people out and enjoying themselves. Again, I think it speaks to healthy communities when you're able to have a thriving arts and culture scene. So I'm very, very proud of our platform's commitment to raise the NOHFC budget from $100 million to $150 million over the next 3 years. There is a significant need. All of those dollars are being spent, they're being used, and I think that we're just seeing that need grow. So it's really an excellent thing to see that that fund will be growing, and hopefully it will support even more arts and culture and film in our region.
And now, Ross, how do you feel about arts and culture?
Very strongly. Arts and culture is something very important, and we have such a strong focus of it here in our community. We have our cultural corridor, we have the Old Stone House, the Bushplane Museum, the Art Gallery. We have what the Group of Seven was and is one of the most landmark types of pieces of art out there, or groups of artwork out there, and it was right in our backyard. It's being showcased in museums elsewhere, not here in Sault Ste. Marie. We need to make investments in arts and culture. NOHFC funding is a good start, but it's not enough. There should be a dedicated budget to Sault Ste. Marie's arts and culture industries. For instance, as a small example, the Bushplane Museum. It is the first ever home base, if you will, it was the start of the Ministry of Natural Resources, and yet they can't get any funding. They receive less than $40,000 a year from the provincial government from that particular ministry, and they have a total budget of $800,000 a year, so less than 1% of their funding comes from the provincial government, yet Sudbury Science North gets over $10 million a year. It's not fair. We need to invest in culture in our community and in our arts because they're important to our community.
Thank you so much, Ross. Michelle?
So culture and art in our community is very important, and we have quite a few people in our community that have gotten awards in our community for the things that they've done here. And in order to build a healthy community, we need things for young people to do, we need things for all people to do. So by investing in our community and in the arts in our community, we can attract people to come here. It'll be a destination. It adds to our tourism, it adds to things in Sault Ste. Marie that people want to do. And by having good paying jobs in Sault Ste. Marie, people have money to spend on those things that sometimes are considered things that we don't always spend money on. So in our platform, we have discussed how we can support the arts and culture across Ontario, and that would certainly assist Sault Ste. Marie with some of the things that have been going on with the Bushplane and with the other different museums that we have here in Sault Ste. Marie, as well as the film and live theatre. The Fringe Festival is a perfect example. The Fringe Festival just came last year, and it's a festival that brings people to Sault Ste. Marie, actors, etc. And it's been an awesome thing for Sault Ste. Marie to bring arts and culture here.
Thank you very much. And Sandy?
Northern Ontario Party platform doesn't really touch on that per se, but the way we're set up, luckily I have a lot of autonomy where I can kind of gauge what we need amongst the city. Again, it ties into tourism, which would be a really wonderful thing. I know on a personal level, you know, your kids, you want them to be engrossed in something, you know, music, things of that nature. I was in theater when I was younger. I'm a cellist now. The Sault Symphony Orchestra, it would be really nice if they could have grants as opposed to jumping through hoops to get funding, whether it's 50% in kind, loan, this and that and the other. So I think that's very important, and I personally would be very would fight for that. My mother-in-law has a stake in the art gallery as well. She's an artist, so yeah, that's something that's very important, and it comes back to familial and people saying that well, there isn't much to do, and those are the types of things that I think would really bring a draw.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time on that one. Jacqueline Hamill, we're going to start this last question with you from the Liberal Party. And I have the question: the mayor felt the need to publish a letter asking for a commitment from the parties to the restructuring of Algoma. So how will you stand behind the steel plant and lead it to business success?
So I'm very proud of the response that I was able to provide to the mayor. We met, and I'm happy to say that Premier Wynne is the only leader of all three parties that, of any of the parties actually, sorry, that did respond to that. We are committed to Algoma. We have done the work that needs to be done to see it to the process that they're at now. So they are at a tentative agreement with their unions. That's good news. It means that they're towards the end of that process. It means that we're nearly there, and we are of course committed to honoring the work that's been done thus far to get them there beyond the election. So again, very, very proud of that. It's something that I'm passionate about. Living here, you know, it's something that we know how dependent people are on Algoma. There's over 2,000 people employed there, so it is an important pillar in our community, and the support is vital. So very proud that we are honoring the commitment that has been done thus far.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And Ross Romano with the PCs.
Well, obviously Kathleen Wynne was prepared to respond to the mayor. During the by-election last year, she indicated that he was her representative at Queen's Park. She didn't need any other representative, and she allowed the city to remain without a representative. She was afraid to call a by-election. She let it slide for 6 months. The fact of the matter is, we need to know what Kathleen Wynne actually wants to do. I can tell you what we would do, what I would do. We need to ensure that the pensions are going to be covered. We need to know that they are going to get every dollar that they are owed. Our pensioners are owed that money. They paid into these things, and they are deserved that money. I'd like to know where she actually stands on these issues as opposed to just making empty promises. With respect to the other issues, there's also the environmental liabilities, the CapEx issues. But there's another important issue. We have creditors in our community that are owed $44 million. We have a city that is owed taxes in excess of $30 million. What's happening with that money? Where is that standing? Since I've been on city council, I advocated that we did not need to waste the city's resources chasing down taxes that we were going to get paid no matter what at the conclusion. And motion after motion after motion was brought, wasting $1 million of the city's money at the municipal level for something that we always knew was going to come out at the end, because it is guaranteed, it is mandated, legislated that the municipality gets paid first amongst all creditors. They will get paid once this process is over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Michelle McLeave-Kennedy with the NDP.
So this is a very important issue for Sault Ste. Marie, as we're all aware, and we know that the steel plant has been in CCAA for quite a while and now has a tentative agreement, and the tentative agreement has been reached, and now it's the point of pushing that forward. So when Trudeau came and I sat around the table with all the other steel stakeholders and people and heads of the city, we discussed issues that were pertinent to the steel plant and how do we keep that going, because as a big employer here in Sault Ste. Marie, that's a lot of good paying jobs that we can't afford to lose. Now on the other side of it, there is a lot of creditors that are owed, as well as the pensioners, and the pensioners should be the first to stand in line. And we have in our platform that the pensioners will be paid their pensions first, so that they're owed that pension. They worked hard for that pension, and they worked for that for their whole life. So we have a program in place to assist this industry, all resources in Northern Ontario, not just the steel plant, but the steel plant is one of the things that we've put things forward and in place. And I think that we need to make sure that that is put forward and this is put past so that we can get going on with jobs in Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you very much. Sandy.
Our party wasn't on the receiving end of the letter, but to speak to that, job security for people is so vital, right? The steel plant doesn't employ nearly as many people as it did in the 80s, and it was a wonderful thing and really the backbone to the city. as far as spin-off jobs, when we can actually, you know, reconstruct and get together. As far as unions go, I think that they should be respected. I think that they should have their due as well as pensioners. And I mean, bailouts are there for a reason, and we're fortunate that that was the case, and hopefully they can get out of it. I mean, they just have to. We can't always rely on the steel plant as being our sole manufacturer, but it's just a vital part of the city and the population. So,
Thank you, Sandy.
Carrie, your turn.
When I got the letter from the mayor, I read it through and I thought, well, what candidate in their right mind would not support this? Because everything had been in place and was ready to implement, and then the election happened and disrupted the process. And I bet you every one of us responded in the same way, that of course if we were involved in government, that we would allow the process to continue to completion. That only makes sense. The steel plant has been a part of our history since probably the very beginning, and we've seen over the years how it has affected us with the several times in my experience here that it's been on bankruptcy protection. And we know as a community, when they don't pay their taxes and don't pay their bills, how crippling it is to us. It also reminds us that too big to fail is very dangerous, and so expanding local jobs and interconnectedness and expanding getting away from the risk of too big to fail, I think, is the future that we need to move to. However, we want the steel plant to be successful.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Now we're going to do something a little bit different because the panelists have been working so hard at developing these questions. What we're going to do here at ONNtv is we're going to allow each candidate to ask one question of any of their fellow candidates, and the fellow candidate will have 60 to 90 seconds to respond. So what we're going to do as well is we're going to start in reverse order that we did with the questions. So Michelle, we're starting with you. Who would you like to ask your question to, and what is it?
So I would like to ask the PC candidate. So Mr. Ford has stated there's going to be $6 billion in cuts, and I want to ask the candidate where those cuts are going to come from.
Ross?
Well, thank you for the question. Big surprise. I have said this time and time again, we are not going to be making cuts. We are going to be making only one cut. That's to red tape, to bloated bureaucracy, and to the present government. I'm not going to take any lessons in math from the NDP party, who have clearly have no concept of how to even look at a balance sheet. You're going to run deficits in your budget. You've indicated that you're going to have a budget of over a deficit of over $13 billion, and you couldn't read a balance sheet. They took $700 million, which was a liability, and they considered it an asset. And then they look at it afterwards, and it took weeks of Andrea Horwath getting beat up in the press before she finally acknowledged that, yeah, there's going to now be $1.5 billion shortfall every year. So how can you possibly justify your math and the cuts that you're going to have to make in order to keep all these broken promises you have? You can't justify these numbers. It makes no sense.
Michelle, would you like to respond quickly?
So Mr. Ford himself has said that there is going to be $6 billion in cuts. So I find it interesting that our PC candidate has said that there isn't going to be any cuts except for to red tape. So that's quite interesting. Being someone who works in education, the concern is, where will it come from? Will it come from the hospital? Will it come from education? And so since you don't even have a platform yet, I'm not sure where things are going to come from.
So you're dreaming this up that it's going to come from these places. Is that why you're calling people in the city? Your volunteers are calling people within the city, telling them that we're going to make cuts to healthcare, we're going to make cuts to education, even though at no point in time has our party ever indicated that we would make any of these cuts. These are lies. It's a little unfair, and I can appreciate why you would do that. But at the same rate, we've made it clear. It's not difficult to make the cuts that need to be made, to find the efficiencies that need to be made, when the Liberal Party of present has $9.2 billion that they overspent on e-health, $8 billion that they lost in the $2 billion from the gas plant scandal, $2 billion in smart meters, $4 billion on the Fair Hydro plan that was just used to shuffle money around. It was a shell game that was played to hide their real accounting. $8 billion in e-health. If we need $6 billion a year, which is your numbers, based on those numbers, well, hey, I just gave you enough to cover a whole 4-year platform for us. So not that hard to find those efficiencies. And actually, if I may add, the Auditor General herself did an analysis of the books, audited the books, and found $1 billion in efficiencies without a single cut, layoff, closure of any kind, simply by looking at 14 of over 1,000 government programs.
Thank you, Ross. We're out of time, but you are next. Which candidate would you like to ask a question of?
Well, my question is for the NDP candidate.
That's a very big surprise.
So my question is this. Over the course of the last few weeks, your party is being looked at as a party who may form government in this province. And I think it's important that you start answering some very tough questions. Now, you have candidates within your party that have come under fire as of late. You have one candidate who recently was seen in a post where he was holding a sign saying F full word, the police. You have another candidate who's gone to a war, wants to start a war with Christmas. Same candidate wants to ban poppies, thinks that they're landfill, thinks that it's propaganda. You yourself as a candidate advocated for the amalgamation of all of the school boards. You have another candidate who believes in the LEAP manifesto, wants to shut down manufacturing, mining, and forestry jobs. You have another candidate who's made a career on banning mining. You have a candidate who actually promoted Hitler in a meme and thinks that Hitler is somehow to that person inspirational, and yet your leader, Andrea Horwath, refuses to get rid of any of these candidates and allows them to stand. Do you approve of Andrea Horwath's leadership strategy, or do you think that do you adopt these candidates' perspectives as your own?
So first of all, let's start off with the public education. So OSSTF, which Ontario Secondary Teachers Federation, which is the union that I'm part of, has talked about one public education system at some point in a conference like in 2016. However, the NDP's platform has nothing to do with that. The NDP's platform discusses that there will be, that we don't have any intention of changing to just one system. As for the other remarks about other candidates in other areas, Doug Ford tactics are certainly here. And not to say that there hasn't been scandal in every party that there is in Ontario, yours included. So interesting that you bring that up. Andrea Horwath hasn't commented on the issues. There's been very many issues across the province in all the parties. And I'm just here to talk about issues in Sault Ste. Marie, what's good for people in Sault Ste. Marie, and bring it back to our platform. I'm not talking about issues that have gone around the province with other people. What's important to people in Sault Ste. Marie is what we're doing here in Sault Ste. Marie, and issues like hydro and healthcare and education and the cuts that your government plans on making to those different areas. That's what's important here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Ross?
Well, so basically what you're telling everybody is that you do believe in amalgamation of the school boards. That's what you're saying. You believe in it, but your party is not going to go in that direction. But you as an individual who wants to be the local representative for the people of Sault Ste. Marie believe in it. You have no problem with candidates that would be a part of potentially, these could be ministers. Like the Jagmeet Singh's brother, who stood up with a sign saying F the police, is being touted as a potential minister. I mean, he's the federal leader's brother. These people are not fit to govern. We need to ask the tough questions. People have been looking at our party for years as being the next government. Okay? It's clear. People have been looking at that. They've only been looking at the NDP for a couple of weeks now. Don't you think it's important that people know? Do you stand for the LEAP manifesto? Do you stand for the banning of mining? Is that appropriate?
Can you come up with a platform so we can see your platform, and then we'd be able to discuss the issues? We can discuss the local issues.
Platforms ad nauseum in this matter. We have a platform. Our platform is for the people.
Michelle,
it is for jobs and growth.
So, as was just discussed, we haven't seen your platform. We haven't seen where anything's coming. You just have allegations that are being made about different things that are happening. Sault Ste. Marie is the issue here. That's where we are in Sault Ste. Marie. I never was anything to do with public education. Yes, my union is looking at that, as I'm sure different unions look at different issues. My union also stands for WSIB cases in health and safety. I was not the guest speaker. You need to get your facts straight. I was not the guest speaker at the event. We stand for WSIB and health of workers too. We stand for a lot of things. I've done a workplace violence workshop around the province discussing education issues and the issues with education workers.
Do you think it's all right to have a candidate that thinks that Hitler's cool?
And that has something to do with the platform in Sault Ste. Marie?
Well, it's a simple question. Do you think it's okay? Do you want to work together in a government, potentially have a minister who thinks Hitler is cool?
Wow. Slamming for tactics here, and we'll just try and divert the issues.
I would be able to tell you, I don't think that's very cool. I think the people of Sault Ste. Marie would like to know whether their representative is going to be in a government with somebody who thinks Hitler is a good person.
It's the first time I've seen it, and no, I would not support that.
You've been in this campaign. Please don't tell people out there that this is the first time that you've heard about somebody who put out in your caucus.
You put it out.
In your candidate pool who believes Hitler is cool, like Andrea Horvath has talked about this online.
Let's get back to the issues in Sault Ste. Marie and discuss things that are happening in Sault Ste. Marie, and that should be our concern.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Jacqueline Hamill, it's your turn to ask a specific candidate a specific question.
So my question is for the PC candidate. Mr. Romano, you spend a lot of time talking about the Ring of Fire, and it's certainly an important topic for our community. If it's not even included in what you are calling a platform, how are you able and what authority do you have to keep your promises?
It is absolutely a part of our platform. We are committed to developing the Ring of Fire. I'm sorry you didn't see it. It is definitely a commitment. It's something that I am very passionate about. When I had the opportunity to go into those communities, I went into every one of the communities that are going to be impacted by the Ring of Fire development, and it was really unfortunate that I spoke with one chief after another chief after another chief, and I could name them all if you'd like, but I don't have that much time. And all they could tell me was, you know what, Ross? We've never been spoken to from a politician like you before. Like, no one has ever come into our community and spent the night here. No one has ever broke bread with us. No one has ever consulted with us and actually listened to us. All the Liberals have done for the last 11 years is come into our communities, tell us what they think we want to hear, and then get back on their plane and fly off and leave us in the dust, leave us in the lurch. Do you know what is happening in those communities that are being impacted? Do you know that Nibinamik has not had water for 13 years? Do you know that Nishkantaga has not had water for 23 years? Do you know that people's homes are burning in the night? I was in Nibinamik the night I was there. Their youth center burned to the ground. You want to know why? Because they haven't had any investments in housing. They literally live meal to meal based on going out and hunting and feeding their people as a group.
So, sorry, short of just seeing that Mr. Ford plans on riding a bulldozer through those communities, what exactly is the plan? All we've seen, don't interrupt me please, this is my time to talk. What, other than petitions on your website, what is your plan? You don't have any costs attached to this. You don't have a strategy. Your leader said himself he will get on a bulldozer and ride through First Nations communities to make this happen. How is that respecting these communities that you're spending time in and telling them that you're going to go in with a respectful approach and develop the Ring of Fire? What is your plan?
I have gone in with a respectful approach, and I have a record of it. In fact, Noront actually said to me, verbatim, Ross, you have accomplished more in the few months that you got elected on the Ring of Fire than the Liberal government has accomplished in 11 years. That came from the CEO of Noront himself. That's the kind of progress that I've made in my short time. You want to talk about silly comments, you want to make false accusations. I'm not going to take any lessons from the Liberals on broken promises. You guys have made promise after promise. How about the promise Kathleen Wynne made after in the last election that she was going to cut auto insurance rates by 15%, then turned around and said,
I'd love to see a plan that you have for that.
That was a stretch goal.
I'd like to see the plan that you have for cutting auto rates. How about saying that you were going to balance the budget last year, and this year you're going to run a $6.7 billion deficit till the Auditor General looked at it and said, sorry, $11.7 billion. Less than 1% of the GDP.
How about the fact
to make investments that people rely on. People are relying on these.
The Liberals are not going to be forming a government at this next election.
Billions of dollars for subways down south. Those cuts have to come from somewhere, people. They're going to come from here.
I will let
without
you go.
Without a plan.
I have no problem. But listen, when Kathleen Wynne made promise after promise after promise that she broke, that is what's wrong with politics today, and I like having a different approach to politics. I make one promise, and I promise to fight for my community. All of these broken promises that you can't afford to pay for that just grow the debt to the largest subnational debt in the world. We currently owe $354 billion, $1.1 billion a month.
Thank you.
In interest payments, sorry. It's sad.
Kara Flanagan, who would you like to ask a question of?
My question is for the Northern Ontario Party. And I think we just witnessed politics the way it is, and the Green Party would like to do politics differently. So I was working one day, and someone recognized me and asked if I was going to run again, and I said yes, and they said, well, have you heard about the Northern Ontario Party? And I hadn't, and I was really interested, and I'd like to ask Sandra, what change would the Northern Ontario Party like to see for natural resources and forestry in our province?
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that's been the consensus. Who is the Northern Ontario Party, right? We're in our inaugural year, so it's tough, right? It's tough trying to get your foot in the door there. But that was basically where it was born from, was all things to do with the North. So we would like to have our own Northern Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, separate from Parry Sound down, because people who work here in forestry and such, they're in the throes of it. They know exactly what's going on in the field, for lack of a better term. So I think that it would be in our best interest to be able to divvy up, the gaming licensing, fishing, fish and wildlife, things of that nature, making sure that Indigenous people have free reign of their hunting and fishing rights. So that's basically where we're at with that. So our platform, it's there's not a lot of dollar signs there and facts and figures that you'll see. So it's kind of like a skeletal outline at this point, but everything on the platform, it's growing, and it all has to do with delving into the northern issues based. So,
Kara, you have the last word on that.
Well, I should have prefaced this conversation as now for something completely different. So, thank you for sharing and bringing new ideas to our conversation, Sandra.
And now, Sandra, it's your turn to ask any one of your fellow candidates any question you would like.
I think most of them get covered, through the processes and through the past couple of weeks, and I just kind of jumped in 3 weeks ago. So, but they're being answered, and that's great. So I would like to just, not a question so much, but for Kara, if she could kind of explain electoral reform and how that would aid smaller fringe parties such as ours, basically.
I'm so glad you asked that, because that is so important in this election and going forward. We saw at the federal level that the Liberal government promised that they were going to end, this would be the last election under first past the post, and again, they promised things and didn't come through. We've seen it in PEI as well, and they're pushing for electoral reform in British Columbia. We need to stop the silliness where we get 39% of the power, they get 39% of the votes, gets 100% of the power. And in that system, there's absolutely no way of stopping the government from doing whatever it wants. And we're seeing this at the provincial and the federal level. So proportional representation means that 39% of the votes gets 39% of the power. And if we had electoral reform during the last election, we would have about 8 Green MPPs at Queen's Park. So that shows how different our government would be, to have different voices at the table. It also helps with the 49%, which is actually the majority in our last 2014 election. The 49% of people who did not vote at all. So you look at almost 70% of people are not represented by the person that got elected that time. So that results in voter fatigue, frustration, people not even bothering to pay any attention, and now more than ever we have to pay attention and get involved. Our future depends on it. So electoral reform is
call, Kara. Thank
something
you.
that's got to happen. Thank you for the question.
Would you like to further that, Sandy? Or?
No, thank you. I think that covers it.
Terrific. We're going to let everybody take a very healthy deep breath.
I need an man.
And what we're going to do now is, in reverse order from the first candidate who answered our questions initially, we're going to ask our candidates to give us some closing statements with regards to their platforms and their policies. So we're starting with Michelle.
So thank you, first of all, for organizing this, and to all the sponsors. And in our platform, I would just like to say that we are going to reduce the hydro rates by 30%, end hallway medicine, which is quite an issue here in Sault Ste. Marie. From people I've heard on the doorstep talking about waiting endless hours at the hospital and having people cared for in a hallway. And that we need to fight for a change for people in Sault Ste. Marie, grow the economy, grow tourism. And I think that I'm the person to do that when the election comes, and be the next MPP here in Sault Ste. Marie. And I think that our community deserves a change, and a change for the better.
Thank you, Michelle. Ross?
Thank you very much. Over the last 15 years of waste and mismanagement in this province, we have tripled our debt, largest subnational debt in the world. We can't continue down this path. We've seen 350,000 manufacturing jobs leave the province because of the minimum wage legislation. We saw 50,000 jobs leaving in January alone, 90,000 expected to leave before the end of the year. We need to do things differently. When you look at the nature of what has caused the problems, things like our hydro rates are a mess. We're going to reduce those. The only reason why we're in the situation we're in is because of Liberal and NDP policy. It's Liberal and NDP policy that caused the hydro rates to go to where they are, that created the red tape. And when I look at these two parties, I see more of the same. We're the only party that is going to be able to move forward on jobs and growth, to reduce hydro rates, reduce taxes, get rid of the carbon tax. It's going to give you 10 cents a litre savings on your taxes on your gas at the pump. And we are going to get rid of the red tape so that we can get Ontario back on track and back to being competitive. We want to make sure that Ontario is open for business. We want to see jobs come to our province. We want to end hallway healthcare. We are going to make record investments in mental health and addictions, as well as long-term care, and make sure that our doctors are not demonized anymore by the government and given the tools that they need to provide quality care. We are going to look at investing in our education system to remedy the mess and our skills gap that we have, and ensure that kids are educated to where the jobs are. I think what we need is somebody who will fight for a community. I believe I'm a fighter. I believe I have a record of doing that for this community, and I look forward to continuing if given the opportunity on June 7th.
Thank you so much, Ross. And now Jacqueline Hamill with the Liberals.
So the 2018 budget, much like our platform, was focused on care and opportunity, and through that we're making significant investments in all types of care. So healthcare, mental health supports, our seniors, education. We're making significant investments, and we are committed to that. It is in our platform. Our platform is comprehensive. It's costed. We hit every single issue that that voters have. It is not just one or two hollow promises that we have no idea how we're going to get to that point. I've talked about knowing what outcomes need to happen, but not about how we're going to get there. And so I think the Liberal platform demonstrates how exactly we're going to get there. We have a plan in place. It's fully costed. I stand behind it. I truly believe that now we need support for people. That's what we're hearing. It's not time for cuts. We need to make sure that supports and services here in the North are fully funded, that we're getting the things that we need so that we have a healthy Sault Ste. Marie. When we have a healthy Sault Ste. Marie, everything thrives. And so making investments that are level across the board with a full comprehensive platform, this is important. It's important. As an advocate, I know Queen's Park. I know how it works. I want to go down there and advocate for you. That's my job. My job is to hear your concerns here in Sault Ste. Marie and bring those back to Queen's Park so that we can make sure that our community is not only just strong and thriving, but that our concerns unique to Northern Ontario are being heard. Thank you.
Jacqueline, thank you so much. And Kara?
Thank you very much for organizing this, and to all of the candidates here who have made this very interesting. The Green Party wants to do politics differently. We want to bring honesty and transparency back into politics, and we also want to have those hard conversations. Going forward, we're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we can't be afraid to be bold and make change, but we must be fiscally responsible and ecologically sustainable. And those are two of the values that we look at are going forward in the province. We've seen that by doing the same thing over and over and expecting another result is really the definition of insanity. So if you are interested in sending a strong message to Queen's Park, in doing something very different, in changing the way we make decisions for our province going forward, be bold. Send a green to Queen's Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Sandy, you're the last one.
And as everyone said, thank you very much for organizing this and including the Northern Ontario Party. We have, you know, a history before of being separatists, but our real goal is to be northern-based. You know, going around and talking to people, they say, well, but I want my vote to count, you know, and I can understand where you're coming from with that. And, you know, we're right there, we're brand new, we're in our infancy, but we are northern based. So if that's at all a concern, you know, we touch on things that hopefully matter to you, and as far as I've seen, do matter as far as people who live here. So, you know, taking a look at patient to care worker ratio. We want to make sure that that gets better by 20%. Look at the Water Act, work with Indigenous communities, of course, look at rural school closings, why that's happening, rail as well, and natural resources, that's a big one, and making sure that we have the autonomy up here to make those decisions right here in our own backyard and actually go ahead and manufacture some of the world's greatest resources. So I really want to thank everybody for lending an ear, because I know everyone's busy, and yeah, I mean, your vote's going to count. I mean, at the very least, you know, half of the people eligible to vote is getting out and voting is just not good enough. So I think we can do better.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you to our panelists, Rory Ring with the Chamber of Commerce and Tim Murphy. Now, Rory, you're involved in a few debates coming up to most elections, because the Chamber of Commerce obviously is very interested in the business aspect of any election. Why do you think debates are so important?
Well, I think one is a bit of a testing ground, if you like, for what actually happens at Queen's Park. When we had our members debate just the other day, we encouraged our attendees to heckle them, just so they could get a feel for what happens really in Queen's Park.
You told me that, Rory, I would have had way more fun today.
But no, it gives an opportunity for us to, you know, really to dig into some of the issues. I mean, obviously you can't within a short time frame get know, too specific. But absolutely, I think it gives you a good sense of, one, how the individual will represent you as a candidate and your community, and it allows some good questions and some tough questions to be put forward. So from the business community perspective, we've put together Vote Prosperity for Ontario. This is a platform that the Ontario Chamber of Commerce has developed by reaching out to the Chamber network throughout Ontario, and that allows us to bring the business agenda, the business conversation into the political debate. And you'll find within that, you know, the pillars do include things like a healthy community, and it's not just focused on private sector enterprise. It really takes a look at government as a whole and what they can do to develop economic prosperity for all of Ontario.
Well, we certainly appreciate your expertise, and thanks for taking the time.
Oh, I greatly appreciate it. This is a great endeavor that Sioux Online has taken on, and I really hope it achieves great success, and one day we hope the Chamber of Commerce will have a show on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're looking forward to that.
Just don't bump mine.
This is your first debate. How do you feel it went?
I had a great time. I was really impressed. I thought you all did extremely well. I said on the morning show with Luann that I have no idea right now still. I mean, I'm going to think about what you all said. I've been doing a lot of reading. This has probably been the most involved. My father was a member of Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie in 1968, but I didn't care about politics. I was far too self-absorbed. Don't get me wrong. I'm still self-absorbed. I just got so good at it. Now I have more time on my hands, so I started paying attention to other things. So no, I've been really having a good time paying attention to my sisters would be proud of me. They've always said I was too fluffy. But anyway, I have to think though, because I don't know who I'm voting for. So best of luck to all of you. I do know I want to thank you all though, because I know the commitment that it takes, and that you all have a tremendous amount of spirit and passion, and for that I respect you, every one of you. So thanks for taking the time out and sharing this with us today.
Very, very much appreciate your attendance. I know that you're running around, running the streets, as it were, and this is, you know, an hour and a half is a long time, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to come by. Thank you, huge thank you to Rory Ring, as I mentioned, and to Tim Murphy. And we want to remind you that the purpose behind ONNtv doing this debate is to remind you that there are issues, and there are issues that people are hearing you on. The only way that you're going to be heard for sure is go vote. And stay tuned. There's always something on TV.